Is this thing on? Welcome back to Big Mouth, and fancy seeing you here in June. I'm very welcome, my friends, and especially my enemies. Come in, sit down, no touching. I don't do the touching. Hello, and welcome to Sunday's edition of the DCEU Daily, and today I'm asking, are we any closer to seeing Zack Snyder's version of Justice League, the Snyder Cut? Back in November the 17th of last year, I felt very, very enthusiastic. I was feeling positive. And Zack Snyder and a lot of people like Ben Affleck, like Gal Gadot, really helped the cause. And Zack Snyder's been dropping a lot of Snyder Cut bombs ever since. And I really believed we was going to get it. I really did. I felt this was the moment. Everyone was with us, the media, everyone. There were still your campiers and people like that. We still haven't heard anything. We still don't know anything. I mean, I was hearing a lot of things back in November 17th, maybe even December, that this is going to happen. This is definitely going to happen. And we were all very excited. We really felt we were going to get the Snyder Cut. I'm not feeling that confident about it anymore. And I think if you're honest with yourself, you're thinking, because I'm really excited with the great work RT Snyder Cut's doing. I'm really infused by you people. You know, we all want the same thing. We want to see this film. Now, I know that the cinema blend guy, and I forgot his name now, he was talking to Jim Lee, who's got a very prominent position with DC right now, as we know. But despite what some people think, he has not got the influence to order this cut. Let me explain to you who Jim Lee is. Jim Lee is a legendary artist. Right now, let me explain to you, he's a peace envoy. That's all he is. So when they were trying to negotiate Ezra Miller being on Crisis on Infinite Earths, right, the Arrowverse TV crossover, and there were things that needed to be ironed out. And Jim Lee was kind of the peace envoy. He came in, he spoke to both sides, and they got it sorted. So you got Greg Berlanti on that side, who desperately wants this to happen, and you got Walter Hamada on the other side, who's obviously developing a Flash movie, and he doesn't want anything getting in the way of that. And Ezra Miller is a big Flash and DC fan. He's chomping at the bit to do this. So Jim Lee comes in. That's all Jim Lee. Now, that's all Jim Lee is. But apparently, Jim Lee was talking to the Cinema Blend guy. What's his damn name anyway? He was talking. Apparently, they spoke about a release, the Snyder Cut comic, a graphic novel. Now, I would buy this. I would be excited to see this film on the pages of a graphic novel, maybe with Jim Lee's artwork. Wow, wouldn't that be amazing? Because I think Jim Lee's definitely a fan of Zack Snyder, and Zack Snyder's a fan of Jim Lee. And of course, Jim Lee does have certain pull in Warner Brothers and DC. I'm not saying that he doesn't, but he doesn't have anything apart from being this iconic legend who comes in, waves a bit, smiles, shakes people's hands, and calms people down. Now, maybe right now he's being a peace envoy. Maybe he's trying to persuade Warner Brothers to release the Snyder Cut. I can believe that. But what I'm getting, really, the atmosphere, I'm not hearing. People ain't coming to me anymore saying, this is going to happen. This is going to happen. The disputes are coming back. The divisive splits via the fandom, and all fandoms have splits. No fandoms are united. Whether you're part of my football club, Manchester United, and we know how we're divided, or the Snyder Cut, or the DCEU, or even MC. Actually, MCU fans seem a lot more kind of unified than anyone else, but that's because they're part of something successful. So it's not hard to have a unification when everything is going swimmingly well. But beware, MCU fans, your time is ending. Just remember we heard this first, right? So right now we're in a position where, like, RT Snyder Cut are doing this artistic competition, right, for the Snyder Cut. Go to RT Snyder Cut on Twitter and check all the rules and how you can enter that. Unfortunately, I'm not an artist. Otherwise, I'll be the first. I want to support this movement. It's a great movement on the whole. I mean, I've spoken about the rogue elements, and I don't want to talk about them anymore because I think 99.9% of us are brilliant people. When I say brilliant people, it doesn't mean that you've never had a parking ticket or you've never done anything wrong. And I want to talk about that. I want to talk about it at the end of the video because we all have this perception of moral hypothesis, if you like. We all think we're morally perfect, and I want to discuss that in the end. And it is kind of linked to the DCEU because something came out last night. So we're talking about whether we will ever see the Snyder Cut. Is there anything we can be doing differently? I think we just got to keep doing what we're doing. They know we're here, right? Look, I get the distinct impression, and I kind of didn't have this impression back in November, that Warner Brothers were thawing to the idea of releasing this cut, then moving on. And then there was people talking about Zack coming back, and and one of the things that made me really positive back then is that Warner Brothers and DC, the official accounts on Twitter, refollowed Zack. And I thought, well, this is interesting. This is exciting. Maybe they're talking. Maybe this is going to happen. Maybe they're still in negotiations and it's difficult because Zack wants his entire vision and he won't be involved unless he gets what he wants. Maybe that's part of the hold-up, but I'm just not hearing that buzz anymore. It doesn't mean we're not going to get it. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying it's gone really, really quiet. Zack reveals certain things now. Look, I don't want him to reveal everything. I mean, he's been very quiet. I mean, we know what happens with Superman in this film. He does come back. He is brought back from the dead by Darkseid. He does become this kind of slave to him and the anti-life equation. I nearly said that wrong. It is very early here. It's about 8:30. But anyway, right. So we know what happens to Superman. We even know that he gets married or does he propose to Lois, or do they get married? I think they get married as well. And we know there's Martian. We find out that there's a Martian Manhunter, and it's a very, very, very exciting who that's revealed to be. So look, we're all desperate to see this film, and yes, it's gonna be better than what we got. That wouldn't be really hard, but look, even though I remember in the early days, someone showed me some kind of edit, and I actually thought that I saw the Snyder Cut, and I came on here. This was in the early days of my channel, saying I've seen the Snyder Cut, and what a twat I felt. But people were doing it back then, and it kind of made I think this is why we weren't really believed back then. But anyway, I kept the video. I didn't take it down because I don't see the point. I obviously haven't seen it, but yes, back then there were so many kind of edits, fan edits, and they were trying to feed them as the official Snyder Cuts, and I was duped. I admit it. But yeah, I haven't seen the Snyder Cut, but basically, I believe it's going to be a great movie. I believe it continues on all the narratives from Man of Steel and Batman v Superman. And I lay there sometimes. I'm on my balcony having a cigarette, and I imagine watching it, and what a beautiful thing it would be. And I just don't feel at the moment we're any closer to getting it, and that's a shame. Maybe that will cost me subscribers. Maybe that'll make you angry. It's just my opinion, by the way. My opinion isn't fact. It's just my opinion that I don't feel we're, at this moment, close to getting the Snyder Cut. So it's just about doing what we're doing. I do feel the attacks on some of the Hamada-verse DCEU and DC movies don't help. The false narrative that Warner Bros. Made a mistake bringing in partners to invest in the Joker movie, making WB look stupid, doesn't warm them to our way of thinking. Targeting Birds of Prey, targeting Margot Robbie, targeting the cast, being personal, doesn't help in our cause. We're supposed to be charming the studio here. We're not, some of you people just don't get how to get what you want. And it isn't by attack. It isn't by arguments. We know what Warner Brothers did was morally wrong, morally corrupt. It was. People talking about suing Warner Brothers now. It isn't going to happen. Forget about it. All we want is to see this film so we can all move on and enjoy what they're going to give us in the future. And if you don't want to be involved with that, you don't have to watch that, obviously. I just want to see this film, whether it's on HBO Max, in the cinema, on 4K Blu-ray, which will be, for me, the best thing, just to have it here so I can see it. What they did to Zack was wrong. Now, they made a decision. They made a business decision, but they did it in a bad way. There were so many different ways, but they were wrong from the beginning. They were cozying up to Christopher Nolan. He wanted Zack. He brought Zack in, and they just didn't say, look, we're not confident about this guy. This guy, a lot of the public don't like this guy. So they let things carry on and play out, and it became a mess. But as a business, you don't get rid of him. You don't get rid of him when there's multiple cuts of the movie. He's ready to go with the movie. As a business, you should do that. Sacking someone or driving someone away and bringing someone else to reshoot lots of scenes and super glue them together to what's left of Zach's movie isn't going to work. As a business, someone in there, an accountant, should have said, you know what, just release this movie, then say goodbye to him. And that's it. And you can and they still could have done what they're doing now with Joker, Shazam. So not only from a business standpoint, it was dumb. It was morally corrupt how they tried to get themselves out of a tricky situation. So I think Zach and us, the fans, were both duped. We were. And as I say, it's a morally bankrupt thing that they did. But big companies don't pay for hurting and betraying people. But what they should do is just release the cut so they can move on and we can move on. So as I've been talking about in the past few episodes of the DCEU Daily, Birds of Prey has come under a lot of attacks, especially from the fandom menace, and it's them I want to focus on right now. Now, one of them today was claiming this film is going to flop hard, and it's a woke, terrible movie, right? That basically the claims they're making now is that DC fans don't want to see it, Batman fans don't want to see it, nobody wants to see it. We're going to see. What's interesting is, when is it, the 7th on Friday, is it? What are we on, the 2nd of February? So it's going to be the 7th this weekend. The reviews will come out maybe, Thursday, Wednesday, something like that. So it's kind of exciting to finally see if the reactions were honest or it was just a bunch of people who were treated to something for free by a company and they just said nice things. We're going to find out. I've never had any illusions that these reviews could be rubbish. I've always believed that this film will do a good, solid box office, but I never thought it could get to $1 billion. But I never thought it would flop. So this is what the fandom menace are claiming. Now, I'm kind of with the fandom menace because I don't always agree with them, but I think they do speak a lot of sense sometimes. But I don't think there's any levity or logic with the attacks on Birds of Prey, because I don't get it. I don't get what you don't like. Yes, we know I said this yesterday. I know they're beating up men, right? And I know it's a girl unity film. Is this such a bad thing? I mean, the ferocity they're going at this film with is the same that they went after Brie Larson with and Captain Marvel. And at least I can understand with Brie Larson, she triggered them with what she was saying politically. And these were really bold statements by Brie, and they were triggering statements. They even triggered me as a guy, in his 40s. But Margot Robbie hasn't been controversial. None of the cast have been controversial. I think the director just said she was important to make a film where women didn't need men to help them or save them, which is a little bit triggering, but it's not the end of the world. So I don't really see why the fandom menace are coming after this movie. Or I do know why they're coming after this movie, because the fandom menace and lots of movements now are more of a business. And there's always got to be something to attack. They're actors now. Basically, they are actors now. So when they first started, do you remember that Star Wars girl who I love a lot? That Star Wars girl did an empowered video, one of her first videos about The Last Jedi and what they did for it. It was nearly 45 minutes long, right? So it was 45 minutes to an hour long, right? It was a beautiful and impassioned. And I started following her on Twitter and following her here on YouTube. And it was like, wow, you are amazing. You're speaking a lot of sense here. This was a very constructive statement, and it was passionate. But what happens after she becomes successful? She becomes a part of the fandom menace, and she starts talking about other things. Do I believe half the things she rants about now? No. I think she's a nice girl. She's also had some struggles in her life. She lost her sister, which I'm very sorry about. But what happens is, once you become successful, other big kind of platforms and constructs want you to join them, and she's done that in a way, but she's still kind of independent, and she does her artwork, and she's a very talented artist. But her first video was genuine. But when you become successful, you just do the things that made you successful. You talk about things what people want you to talk about, so you get the views, the likes, and the sponsorships, right? That's how this business works. So that's why I believe it. And talking about that, I have to talk about this situation, and that's what I'm going to do. The Amber Heard Johnny Depp situation, they were both married and both of them have accused each other of domestic violence. Now, yesterday on Twitter, regrettably, there was an audio of Amber kind of admitting to hitting Johnny. Now, Johnny was wearing something, he wanted evidence against her, and this happened a long time ago. Now, obviously, what we hear in an argument, it's an argument, but let me tell you what I think. I think these two people were in a very aggressive, violent, passionate relationship. I think they probably both hurt each other, both physically and emotionally. And then when it was over, they both wanted to win an argument. Now, this is interesting, isn't it? And nobody wins an argument. Not on social media and not in real life. What happens in social media? We argue, and then what happens? One blocks the other, right, or mutes the other. And then the other goes, I've muted them. How they still think they're talking to me? I've won. Nobody wins an argument. Nobody wins an argument where you're trolling someone or whatever happens. In the end, people just get hurt. That's all that happens. Nobody wins, but everybody wants to win. Amber Heard and Johnny Depp wanted to win. I'm talking about this because Amber is a very important part of the dceu now, and I don't want that ruined because of this, and hopefully it won't. This is Hollywood, basically. She'll probably get one of those prints on the Walk of Fame or something. But I don't think she's going to get done for this. But at the end of the day, I believe this is a couple that had a very, very kind of relationship, and in the end, both want to win the argument. And really, if they just kept quiet, had a quiet divorce, nobody would have been none the wiser. I mean, obviously, hurting each other physically isn't on, and it isn't a good thing. And I think both people need to see someone and calm down and talk. But I think what this has opened, of course, is men being accused of things that maybe they're not necessarily guilty of. And maybe when women do it, it's kept quiet and excuses are made. I don't want to go into that because I like Amber Heard. I just think that maybe Amber needs to talk to someone, and hopefully she's getting the help she needs. She does a lot of great charity work. She travels the world. And I think she's a brilliant mirror. And I don't think, in life, as long as if you've got issues, you need to go and get help for them right at the end of the day. And we live in a society now, blame culture, right? 1 minute we all love someone, then we find out something about them and it's a thumbs down instead of a thumbs up, isn't it? And I think this is the culture we live in. But here's the problem. If I start looking down at Amber for what I heard in that conversation, that means I'm perfect. I am one of the most flawed human beings in the world. And I definitely have issues, and I definitely have to talk to professionals. There's no question about that. So how can I judge Amber? How can I judge Johnny when I'm not perfect? And guess what? Every one of you watching this video have done something morally questionable in your lives. You are not perfect. What right do we have to judge each other and go in on each other? Let's enjoy each other's platforms. Let's agree to disagree. There's a YouTuber called Bowles Trek, right? I'm sure you know him. He's very conservative, very right-wing, and he's very aggressive. But I still find his reactions to Batwoman and Doctor Who hilarious. I don't agree with what the guy says. Now, some people choose to attack him because of his views. Now, as I say, I don't think they're nice views. I don't think they're kind views. But I think that he has a right to air those views. And that's what's brilliant about Twitter and YouTube, especially YouTube. YouTube gives ordinary, everyday people, talented people, the chance to express themselves. And once we try and muffle that, and once we try and put the thumbs down on something on people we had the thumbs up on, it becomes very, very problematic. I'm talking about this because, as I say, Amber is a member of a film franchise I'm very supportive of and I care about. And I just feel that instead of judging each other, judging famous people, just remember, you've done or said something that's wrong before, right? You may not be the worst person in the world. We all, in our everyday life, there's this thing about good people. Nobody's good, nobody's bad. We're just indifferent. There's a little bit of everything inside us. Instead of judging each other, let's be there for each other. Let's be there for each other, and let's let each other say what we want to say. Unfortunately, this is the curse of the internet now, right? And it happens in our community, the Snyder movement, right? Where someone says one thing, someone says it's going to cost 40 million to make kind of make sure the Snyder Cut's presentable, right? And then another side of people start attacking that person for saying that, and it becomes very toxic, right? And of course, a lot of us were triggered by the 40 million thing, but I still like the person and follow the person, and I didn't argue with the person because I just said I didn't believe that was the case, but he could be right and I could be wrong. There was no need to go on the attack like some people did. And I think we just need, and I need to do this as well. I do it. I overreact to people. I can be toxic as well. We all can. We just all need to take a step back and remember none of us are perfect. I hope you enjoyed today's video, and I'll be back tomorrow with more DCEU Daily. So, what do you think? Are you more excited? Do you think there's a real chance of the Snyder Cut coming out? Or do you still think, like me, that we're still a little bit far away from seeing this? And also, let me know what you think we can do to persuade Warner Brothers in a constructive way to release this cut. Thank you for watching, and I'll be back tomorrow with more DCEU Daily.